There's something really captivating about just watching nature, isn't there? Like the power in a river or how a fish can just hold itself steady in a fast current.
Absolutely.
Have you ever seen a trout maybe just sitting there in really choppy water?
Mm.
Or notice stones in a clear mountain pool that almost look like they're, well, moving by themselves?
Yeah.
Well, our deep dive today is about a man who saw those things. And for him, they weren't just, interesting observations. He saw a kind of hidden logic, something fundamental that he thought conventional science was totally missing.
Viktor Schauberger.
Exactly, Viktor Schauberger. And he wasn't your typical scientist in a lab coat. He was, well, they called him a forest man. He learned directly from the woods and streams in Austria. Definitely controversial, pretty audacious, maybe way ahead of his
A
time.
fascinating figure.
So we're taking a deep dive into his life, his really unique way of seeing nature, and the bold theories and even inventions that came out of it.
And we're using the book Living Water as our main guide here, which gathers a lot of insight into his work.
Right, so this dive is all about exploring Schauberger's world based on the details in this text you've shared.
That's the plan. Our mission really is to unpack his perspective on energy, in nature, on water, on life itself. We want to look at why he pushed back so hard against conventional thinking and, see if his ideas hold any relevance for us today, sticking closely to the material provided.
Okay, let's get into it. Viktor Schauberger, born into a family with generations of forestry experience, right? Lived deep in the Austrian wilderness.
Yeah, really immersed in it from a young age, roaming these almost untouched forests and mountain streams.
And he didn't have that formal science education, but he was clearly a sharp observer, trusted what he saw, his intuition, more than what the experts were saying.
That was his core philosophy, simple but profound. Nature is the best teacher. He really believed that modern technology, our conventional way of doing things, was fundamentally working against nature.
Against its principles.
Exactly. He saw nature's forces as usually inward-moving, cooling, constructive, whereas our tech was often explosive, heating, destructive. He thought we should be working with those natural principles.
And the book highlights some specific observations he made. Like water. He didn't just see H2O. He called it the Earth's blood.
Right, like a living thing with its own rules. It needed to flow naturally, winding curves, shaded banks, trees alongside it. That's how it stays healthy, protected from too much direct sun, which he saw as bad for it.
Okay, and what about the fish? The trout and salmon studies.
Oh, those are key. He'd watch them just hanging motionless in incredibly strong currents, almost suspended.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And then if you startled them, boom, they'd dart upstream against the flow super fast and jump waterfalls like it was nothing.
So what was his take on that? Just powerful muscles.
He thought it was more than that. He theorized they were tapping into some kind of unseen energy, an inward-moving force flowing opposite the water current itself, like they were using nature's own energy, helped by their shape and how they moved.
Wow. Like grabbing onto an invisible current. Okay, then there's that really strange thing. The egg-shaped stones moving in a pool at night.
Yeah, that's a bizarre one. He described watching these smooth, egg-shaped stones, pretty big, start spinning in this mountain pool. They'd rise to the surface, seem to float for a bit, then sink. But the angular stones nearby, they just stayed put.
So, what did he make of that? Magic rocks.
Well, not exactly magic. He connected it to a unique kind of energy generated by that specific spinning vortex-like motion, an energy he thought could even counteract gravity potentially. It just reinforced his idea that matter wasn't inert. It could be animated by the right kind of natural movement.
Okay, that's mind-bending. And there was another observation, maybe the most important one for his practical work, something about a snake.
Yes, absolutely pivotal. Watching a grass snake swimming, he noticed its complex motion twisting, undulating both vertically and horizontally, a kind of wave. And he realized this wasn't just how it swam, it was incredibly efficient, like it was harnessing some specific energy from the water itself.
Right, and this snake idea became critical when he tackled a big real-world problem, getting timber down mountains.
Exactly. The old ways were brutal, damming streams, creating these artificial floods, just smashing the logs down the mountainside. Terrible for the wood, terrible for the rivers.
So Schauberger comes along.
And proposes this totally different wooden chute, not straight down like an engineer would design. It zigzagged, following the valley contours like a natural stream.
Mimicking nature again.
Precisely. And crucially, he insisted on adding cold water along the way, replenishing it. He said the water had to be cold, especially for the big logs, because cold water is denser and, in his view, more energetic, more carrying.
Okay, but it wasn't working perfectly at first.
Yeah.
Then came the snake insight.
Right. The story goes he was struggling with the prototypes, logs getting stuck. Then he saw that swimming snake, had his eureka moment, and rushed back to the chute.
And what did he do?
He added these specially shaped timbers inside the curves of the chute, forcing the water into that same snake-like twisting, swirling motion, creating little whirlpools as it flowed, and it worked astonishingly well. This seemingly idiotic design, cold water plus the snake motion, floated these heavy logs 50 kilometers down quickly, efficiently. The engineers who'd laughed at him were completely stumped.
That must have felt good.
It led to him becoming a state consultant for timber flotation. But, there was jealousy, opposition from the academic world. He eventually resigned. But there's even film footage, Trajendi Zosser, documenting these chutes.
Amazing. And he applied these ideas to rivers in general, not just log chutes.
Oh, yeah. He saw deforestation making streams wild and destructive, stripping the banks, losing that moss he noted pointed upstream because of the water's energy flow, leading to erosion, silting, springs drying up.
Contrasting that with healthy streams.
Right. Healthy streams, with their natural windings and vegetation, kept the water cool, vital, and carried sediment properly without silting up, precisely because of that energetic, swirling flow. He even patented ideas for river regulation, using braking elements to mimic natural obstacles and manage flow.
So his core argument was that a healthy river cleans itself, essentially, through its natural movement.
Exactly. It uses those inward swirling forces.
Okay, so we see how vital movement and temperature were for him regarding rivers. But he went deeper into the nature of water itself, didn't he? Calling it a living organism.
He really did. Like blood in our bodies, he saw water as having its own vital laws.
Yeah.
Quality was everything.
How so? What makes good water in his view?
Well, mountain spring water was the ideal. Matured underground, away from light and air, picking up minerals, carbon content. That was fundamentally different, far more alive than rainwater or surface water baked by the sun. And that plus 4 degrees Celsius temperature, that was key. The point of water's greatest density, and for him, its greatest vitality and energy carrying capacity.
Which led him to some pretty controversial ideas about water pipes.
Definitely. He thought modern pipes, iron, concrete, were terrible for water, forcing it into straight lines, unnatural friction, heating it up, killing its vitality. He argued it even affected human health negatively.
So what did he suggest instead?
Natural materials first, like wood or stone. Or, if pipes were needed, they should be specially designed. Spiral pipes made of copper or silver alloys that would encourage the water's natural swirling motion, help keep it cool and maintain its quality. He even claimed such pipes could help remove pathogens naturally.
Interesting. Okay, so from water health to agriculture, he applied these same principles there too.
Yes, very much so. He saw modern farming chemical fertilizers, deep plowing with heavy machinery, especially iron tools, as incredibly destructive.
Destructive how?
He believed they destroyed the soil's capillary system, those tiny pathways for water and air, led to soil degradation, lower productivity, and crucially food that was lower in quality, lacking vital energy. He even controversially linked this decline in food quality to diseases like cancer.
Wow, that's a strong link. Did he champion any specific traditional methods instead?
Absolutely. He was fascinated by older practices that seemed to work with nature, like one called clay singing or tonzingen.
Clay singing?
Oh.
Seriously?
It sounds strange, I know. But the practice involved stirring specific types of clay and water in a barrel, using particular motions, sometimes even literally singing into it. The idea, as he understood it, was this created finely charged crystals.
And what did they do with these crystals?
Sprinkled them on the fields. He believed they formed a kind of insulating layer, retaining moisture, encouraging beneficial microbes, and significantly boosting yields. He reported increases of up to 30% in some cases.
30%? Just from sung to clay. That's hard to wrap your head around from a conventional science view.
It is. But for Schauberger, it showed how subtle energies, intense specific processes could have real effects. He also noted things like sun plowing, orienting furrows to shield the soil from too much direct sun, protecting its coolness and moisture.
And the tools themselves mattered, like hand scythes.
Yes. He observed traditional scythes sharpened by hammering on hardwood. He theorized this method closed the cut on the plant stalk, preserving its energy, unlike machine blades, which he felt left an open, damaging cut.
Okay, but his biggest issue seemed to be with iron tools and farming. Why such strong opposition to iron?
He had several reasons. He thought iron plows heated the soil through friction, that the rust they produced was harmful, that they disrupted the Earth's natural magnetic fields, and caused electrolysis, electrical currents breaking down soil compounds. Basically, he felt iron tools grained the soil, compacted it, sucked out its water and vital energy.
Whereas copper?
Copper, he believed, was biologically beneficial. It resonated positively with the Earth's energies. He pointed to tests done under his guidance that reportedly showed significant yield increases, anywhere from 17% to 35%, even up to 50% in one trial, just by using copper plows instead of iron ones.
It's a huge difference. Did he actually design alternative tools then?
He did. He envisioned things like a spiral plow, inspired by how a mole burrows, meant to work the soil gently with minimal resistance. And he worked on a device called the repulsator,
What was that supposed to do?
create power water through vortexing, and then radiate this beneficial energy into the soil. He actually believed devices like this could eventually turn deserts fertile.
Ambitious. And his compost method was also specific, right? Noble compost?
Very specific, not just letting stuff rot. It involved layering certain materials, covering it precisely, using silica sand, aiming for a particular process of microbial action and worm decay until it hit that ideal +4 degree state and flowered, as he put it, full of life energy.
And applying this carefully.
Thinly, with non-iron tools, yes.
Yeah.
And again, he reported significant boosts in harvest quantity and, importantly, the quality and vitality of the food grown.
So it all connects back. The forest, the water, the soil, the food.
And ultimately, human health and even spirit. It was all one system for him. He was quite clear in his warnings. Degrade the water in the soil, work against nature, and you inevitably get decline physical, cultural, spiritual.
Right. Which brings us to maybe his most fundamental and perhaps most challenging idea, the concept of implosion versus explosion.
Exactly. This really underpins everything. He saw our technology as based on explosion. Outward force, heat, breaking things apart, destructive. Think combustion engines, explosives.
Okay.
Nature, he argued, primarily uses implosion. Inward-moving forces, cooling, integration, building up creative processes, like a whirlpool or the vortices he saw everywhere in healthy, flowing water. Implosion for him was nature's secret, life-affirming energy source.
So the trout holding its position, the spinning stones, the snake swimming, those were all examples of implosion at work.
That's how we saw them. Manifestations of this principle, the suction spiral, that cycloid inward-moving vortex motion that was the key mechanism, he believed, for generating this cool, vital energy directly from motion itself, the engine of life.
And he tried to build machines based on this.
He did. He spent a lot of effort on it. There was a biosynthesis apparatus trying to mimic how nature transforms matter, potentially creating fuel traces through cooling and vortexing. And the trout turbine?
The trout turbine, based on the fish.
Yes, designed to harness energy from water or air using spiral pipes that mimicked the principles he saw in fish and water flow. And there are these accounts. One claims a machine he built generated such powerful, unexpected forces that it apparently tore itself loose from its foundations. He couldn't control the implosive energy release.
Whoa! Why did he think that happened? Just too much power.
The implication in the accounts is that it was the nature of the force, this intense, inward-pulling vortex energy that was uncontrollable, unlike the expansive push of explosion we're used to managing. He also floated ideas like a domestic power station.
What was that?
A concept for a device that could amplify a small energy input, recirculate water, maybe using what he called biological magnetism, harnessed through these implosion principles. Self-sustaining energy, essentially.
Okay, and then we get to the really out-there claims. The wartime stuff.
Right, the most provocative ones. He claimed, especially relating to his work during WWII under duress, that he developed aircraft engines using air as fuel by making it implode, and his involvement with an SS project to build a flying saucer prototype.
A flying saucer, powered by a trout turbine.
I know.
That's quite something. What does this source material actually say?
Well, the book mentions these claims, linking them to his forced wartime work. It's definitely where things get most debated. The details provided are limited, describing a prototype, maybe 1.5 meters across, weighing 135 kilos.
Did it fly?
Reportedly, it briefly lifted off on its first test, hit the ceiling, and was wrecked. After the war, the story goes, American forces seized all his related work. Schauberger himself was apparently confined for a time and warned not to pursue research into these new energy forms or risk being arrested again.
So looking back at his whole life and work, it was really a fundamental critique of modern society's path, wasn't it?
Absolutely. He saw science and technology as too materialistic, too focused on the outward, the explosive, and just blind to the vital inward implosive energies that he believed truly drive nature. He felt this blindness was leading us towards decay because we were constantly violating nature's basic laws.
But he faced huge challenges getting these ideas across.
Immense challenges.
Yeah.
Being self-taught, using language that often sounded mystical or cryptic, relying on observation and intuition rather than conventional maths. It made him an outsider to the scientific establishment. Plus, he genuinely feared his discoveries would be misused, weaponized, which made him cagey.
It's interesting, though, the text mentions another scientist, Felix Ehrenhaft, whose work seemed to echo some of Schauberger's ideas independently.
Yes, Ehrenhaf's experiments back in the early 20th century. He observed tiny particles moving in spiral or screw-like paths when exposed to magnetic fields or strong light. It seemed to support Schauberger's view of matter as fundamentally dynamic, moving, influenced by forces beyond standard physics at the time.
And is any of this relevant today? Does anyone still look into vortexes and implosion?
Oh, definitely. Aspects of vortex research are ongoing. You see it in water treatment, things like flow forms designed to revitalize water using rhythmic motions, or e-water from vortex machines, even some research into building materials using vortex principles. And certainly his critiques of industrial farming and water management resonate very strongly with today's regenerative agriculture and ecological restoration movements.
So, to kind of wrap this up, Viktor Schauberger presented this profoundly different lens for viewing the world, all based on his deep personal observations of nature, a holistic view connecting energy, water, soil, life, standing in pretty stark contrast to a lot of conventional thinking even now.
Implosion, that inward cooling creative force, was his key. Hidden in plain sight, he thought, in swirling water, in fish, even in spinning stones.
And his warnings about working against nature, his belief that the real answers lie in understanding and cooperating with her principles, seeking life-affirming implosion over destructive explosion.
You could argue they feel more relevant than ever, given the environmental and energy challenges we're facing globally.
It really leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Schauberger's deeply believed that everything came from water, and that unlocking its secrets, its vital energy, held the key to peace and abundance. Are we as a society maybe still drastically underestimating water and the wisdom embedded in the natural world he spent his life studying, still favoring our standard explosive ways?